Hi everyone, it's Mithril and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. So I feel like I've lived an entire lifetime since the last video came out. Long story short, I visited Kevin and the others at the art studio in New Jersey, did some painting, got some Kevin wisdom, looked around for apartments. While I was there, my boyfriend moved everything from our old apartment to the new apartment so we can save on rent during my gap year. I got back and we unpacked for the last week and a half. I realized that the lighting sucks in the basement that we now live in and that I broke my tripod while I was in New Jersey. So I got some new lights, a new tripod, and now I can finally film this video. Along with not having any lights to film with, I also didn't have any lights to paint under, so maybe this can kill two birds with one stone. I will report back with my findings. So to start off, I'll clarify some things with my plans because I have heard some confusion. This may not all be historically accurate because I didn't realize how much I didn't know before I sat down and started filming this video. So Kevin Murphy is a painter who worked as a commercial illustrator for many years. Then he opened up an art school in New Jersey called the Art Academy, where he came up with a teaching technique to provide a true art fundamentals education to students of all ages as quickly and painlessly as possible. After many years of teaching, Kevin and Mitch Bowler from Pencil Kings teamed up to create the online course Evolve Artist, which teaches the same techniques as the Art Academy to students all around the world. So this course has the same level of education, the same professional level art supplies, and guidance from instructors who are former students of Kevin's. And this is where I come in. So I made a video a while back about a bunch of online art courses and programs, and I was wondering which one I should take. Then a viewer of mine reached out and said, "Hey, I found this thing called Evolve Artist. Do you think I should take it?" And I was like, hello, what is this? I don't really believe it because it looks too good to be true and it looks like exactly what I'm looking for. So I watched a bunch of videos on it, did a bunch of research. I reached out to the Evolve Artist Instagram page, which was being run by Daniel Folta, and he answered my questions like a champ for 2 days before he then directed me to calling with Kevin directly. Kevin talked with me for an hour about the program, and I was convinced on the spot. And then I signed up within a week of finding it. I finished my first painting on August 20th, 2020. And today it's August 10th, 2021, and I've finished 56 paintings. So I didn't actually finish it within a year, which I thought I would do. But I feel like I have made so much progress that I didn't even know was possible before. A few months ago, I decided I wanted to dedicate some time in my life towards studying art full time. I told Kevin about this and he invited me to study with him at the Art Academy in his full-time program. This is a program that he usually offers to his students who are graduating from high school and want to take a gap year to improve their portfolios before going off to an art college or art school somewhere. So to sum things up, I'm doing the foundation blocks right now, which are 4 blocks in total. I'm finishing up block 3, and I'll get a little bit into block 4 before I get to New Jersey. When I get to New Jersey, Kevin will sort of fast track me through the end of block 4 and then get started on blocks 5 through 8 in the advanced materials. So it's the same curriculum online and in the studios, same supplies and everything. So I'm not quitting Evolve Artist, more like going to Evolve Artist live and in person. Then Kevin invited me on a trip to New Jersey to see what it's like, make up my mind completely on whether I wanted to go or not, and to find an apartment. I feel like the trip went really well. I was able to spend about 5 days at the studio. I met Kevin and Daniel Folta and a couple of the advanced students. The studio was like art heaven or something. It was so new and yet familiar at the same time. Like in Evolve, they send you the paints and the canvases and the brushes and the palette papers and stuff, and you use an easel and you have paper towels. But at the studio, they have all that, except it's just stacks and mountains of beautiful supplies. Instead of working by myself, there was so much focus and energy in the other students, and it was invigorating. It was also really amazing to be able to see the paintings on the wall in person. They're all done by current and past students from the studio. Just 1 year ago, I would have thought that producing something like that would be impossible for me. but seeing what I've been able to accomplish, as well as what the other students from the studio and online with Evolve have been able to do, I know that if I just keep working hard, I'll be able to do exactly what all the students who came before me have been able to. Also, I saw this canvas with a demo that Kevin did for me a few months ago, and he let me take it with me. So while I was there, I wanted some help with sketching straight onto the canvas with paint and my gradients because I've been struggling with both of those. So Kevin set up a still life for me, did a quick demonstration, gave me some tools, and I started working. It was crazy seeing him work so quickly, and in like a second, the sketch just materialized. Nervously, I sat down and took up the brush. I got to live stream this whole thing too, which was really cool. I'll leave the link to my live stream replay playlist in the description and in the cards. Disclaimer, I realized on this trip how little I really knew about making videos, social media, live streaming, and all that. So a lot of my videos are shaky and the audio isn't great. Since I will be dedicating more of my time to making videos in the future, I'm investing some time and money into upgrading my equipment and knowledge, hence the lights and the tripod. And I also want to get a new phone too, since I film all my videos on it and I need to charge it literally 3 or 4 times a day with normal use. Anyway, while I was painting, Kevin walked by and asked me how long I was taking to fill in the colors on the pear. And I said, oh, maybe 30 minutes so far, and he was just aghast. He had me move over to show me how I didn't really need to fuss so much on the neatness of the edges while filling in the initial colors, because I'm at the point where I'll be able to fix it up when I paint the opposite edges, like say filling in the background. Of course, it's important to put in top effort where it's deserved, but putting effort where it doesn't need any is just a waste of time. This just blew my mind, and it was the first of many pointers that Kevin would give me about my priorities when painting. So yeah, this is his 8-minute demonstration of a pear that ultimately took me an hour and 14 minutes. It was really cool working in the studio. The second I walked in, I felt at home. Looking at all the other students' palettes, they were set up exactly how I was taught online, even though they're way past the techniques that I'm learning right now. Even the shelves full of still life subjects had so many familiar items. I felt such a sense of relief seeing them and realizing that I really just didn't have anything to paint at home. Seeing these, I could instantly tell that they were nice still life subjects, since most of them were only one color, not shiny or transparent, large enough to see and measure from a distance, and there was a variety of complexities that could scale up or down. I mentioned to Kevin that I didn't have much to paint at home and that these subjects were so nice, and he said that he didn't either, and that if someone told him to find something in his house to paint, he'd be hard-pressed to come up with anything. I don't know why I put so much pressure on myself to be able to find stuff to draw without buying anything new. I kind of felt like if I was a real artist, I'd be able to make anything work. But like, I'm not. I'm a student, and I'm making things difficult for myself and feeling bad about it for no reason. Anyway, these feelings completely dissolved in my heart when I heard Kevin say that. Also, the concept of me setting weird standards for myself that literally no one asked of me, that's gonna be a common theme coming up. Also, I really enjoyed the actual painting setup at the studio. Like, it has all the same parts as the one I have at home, just optimized and better. And so you know how Kevin is always talking about how you don't want to be fighting your supplies? And that's a major reason why they provide most of the supplies for the online program and literally everything for the in-person program? Well, apparently that applies to more than paints and paintbrushes. For example, one pain point for me at home was this tiny bin I was using to throw away my used paper towels, as opposed to this huge, easy-to-use trash bin at the studio. My home setup was annoying me, but I didn't realize how big of a difference it made until I experienced the idealized form. Also, the thick, high-quality paper towels made such a difference for me. You remember from my last video how I was talking about my forearms and my fingers hurting from wiping the paint off the paint palette? Well, with these paper towels, I didn't have to double fold them. Folding them once was good enough to have no paint leaking through. I also didn't have to press as hard, so I had no pain or strain from using these and cleaning off my palette knife. I thought that since I would be going through so many paper towels, that it would be a good idea to go a bit more low quality on them. But now I'm realizing that that move could have and has already caused me pain and potential injuries. And I ended up having to use more paper towels overall because one sheet was so leaky that I had to keep folding it over multiple times in order to not get paint all over my fingers. I'm starting to understand why Kevin wants us to only use the best paint and brushes and canvases. Because after you figure out the ideal setup and how that's supposed to function, then you can start making compromises and adjustments in ways that are controlled and that you can understand. I was just falling into my setup, and I didn't even realize there was better out there because I'm not informed enough to make these choices for myself. Also, another thing that felt much improved was the fact that I had unlimited paint because it was being provided by the studio. It took me a while, but over time, I started feeling more comfortable with using and mixing more and more paint. And wow, it makes such a huge difference. The paint on the palette dries slower when it's a larger pile, and it's so much easier to work with. It's a huge mental barrier to get across when you're painting at home because the paint really is a limited resource. But I feel like the difference in the learning that it makes it worth it to actively try and overcome those mental barriers. This paint is to learn with, not to hoard, which was my first instinct as a frugal, hoardy person. But if I do that, I'm just robbing myself of the optimal opportunity to learn, which is what I'm paying for in the first place. So then I got back to work finishing this first painting. Kevin gave me the advice that I'm not trying to make a perfectly smooth gradient with no way to tell where anything changes in the color. I'm just trying to eliminate any vertical edges because those are the most noticeable to the human eye and communicate a change. Not me, who's just been pulling the paint on my gradients up and down this whole time to blend them, and also freaking out because I can make good gradients without needing to transition completely seamlessly. And Kevin's just here like, yeah, who said it needed to be perfect? You're holding yourself to such a high standard that nobody asked for, so listen to me and do the things my way, and those skills are the exact same ones that made every single painting on the wall. So I tried my best to eliminate the vertical edges and not hold myself to perfection, but I did not like how it turned out at all. When Kevin came back, he was like, let's do a gradient exercise tomorrow. It was getting late, so I decided to finish up the painting and just choose a lighter color for the tabletop and a darker color for the background since I'd seen some other students do something similar. Kevin came back and he was like, "What are you doing? The background is light, so it should be much more similar to the tabletop than a shadow. And if you don't match those values, you won't be able to tell how accurately you mix the colors since the relationships won't be the same." Again, this is something that I chose not to prioritize that was actually a lot more important than I thought. He painted over my background a bit just to show me how the values look different with a different background, and wow, it really made a difference. Alright, cut to the next day, and Kevin is taking me around the studio to every painting on the wall, showing me how those gradients are not silk smooth. They're just smooth enough to do the job without any vertical edges. Then, gradient exercise. Kevin gives me a set of grayscale paint and a canvas with rectangles on it and tells me to fill them in. I put out a few lines of paint on the palette and Kevin's like, whoa, what are you doing? You didn't tape down the palette paper, you didn't measure out the 4 centimeters of paint. How are you gonna know how much oil to add into the paint? Again, me getting lazy on some aspects of the painting process because I felt like I'd moved past this. You know, because in the colored portion of block 3, you don't measure out a specific amount of paint. You just, mix your color and then add enough oil to make it smoother. And so here's me thinking that these rules don't apply to me anymore. So then Kevin takes this palette paper filled with paint and throws it away. He's like, that's useless now. And I'm like, oh my God, the paint. And he very carefully puts out exactly 4 centimeters of paint and measures out the exact number of drops of oil to put into it. So then I mixed up the paints really well and started doing the gradients. Kevin comes back and he's like, whoa, why are you doing gradients? I wanted you to fill in the rectangles. I already know you're struggling with gradients. And I'm like, crying inside. Then I fill in the next row of rectangles. He comes back and does some demos for me and gave me some tips, like lifting the brush off the canvas as little as possible and using as large a brush as possible so the pressure is distributed more evenly and is lighter overall, so it doesn't actually disturb the paint too much.
Remember I was saying to you yesterday, it doesn't have to be absolutely silk smooth. It just has to not have defined edges. And if you look in here, there's no place in here where you could say that's exactly where the light ends and the shadow begins. Like this one, right there, that's where it happens. No question. Same with this one, it happens right there. In here, there's no defined place where I can say that is exactly where we shift from shadow to light. There's no edge in here. That's all we're looking for, nothing more than that. And it's not that there aren't little jumps. There are little jumps. There's one back in here, it's kind of smooth up here, there's a little one right there, a little one out here. But there's no clearly defined edge where we jump from shadow into light. That's what a gradient is. Again, knowing what your goal is, right? So like when I tell you, like, this is the criteria for a gradient, the criteria is to tell you the destination. If you don't know where you're going, how do you get there?
I did a few using his method, and wow, it's so much improved from my gradients before. He said that we were going to move on to doing some color gradients. So he got me to use the pure paint out of the tube as the light part of the gradient and mix in some black for the shadow, then make admixtures for each color for the middle bits of the gradients. While I was preparing these mixtures, he pointed out to me that my shadow color for the yellow was too dark. Too dark? I thought. How can a shadow be too dark for a particular light? Because aren't shadows just supposed to be darker than lights? I didn't know there were rules for how dark they could get too. He explained that a light object's shadow can only get so dark because it reflects ambient light a lot more readily than a darker object. Also, a larger gap between the light and the dark value would be a lot harder to make a gradient out of. And I thought, my graders have been pointing out to me that a lot of my shadow values are too dark, and he said exactly. Because the grader didn't connect the lackluster gradients and the too dark shadows for me, but they are definitely related, and if I'm more careful in the future to not darken my shadows too much and keep them colorful, I'll find gradients a lot easier. And yo, this is when it really clicked for me how learning from life and realism can help you with doing art from imagination. Like, if I was trying to shade something, I never would have thought about how dark each shadow should be relative to the light. And apparently, I have a tendency to go too dark. This would result in an artwork that could look nice, but not completely believable, and I would have no idea why. Anyways, so I do my colored gradients, they come out so well, and I'm super proud of them. And they were so easy now that I'm actually using the right technique and mindset. The next day, I come back and try another still life, combining everything I've been learning in my few days here at the studio. I sketched out the subject very lightly without much oil or paint on my brush. I filled it in carefully, but not too slowly, being careful not to mix the shadow of the cat too dark. Then I used my new gradient technique. I did the highlights and reflections, mixed the background colors carefully, and filled them in. And wow, this is far and beyond the best painting I've ever done. And I hesitate to say this, but it was so easy. It was meditative and fun, and I was just vibing, not worried about any part of it because I've got it all down now. That part shocked me most of all, and I am truly shook. I thought I would never get here, and just, wow. I feel like my painting finally has that beautiful effect that the other students' homework has. I'm not sure how to put my finger on it, but it just feels different from my other work. Also, I improved this much in like 4 days. I literally cannot wait to see what a whole year here can do for me. Anyway, so speaking of pressure that I put on myself for no reason, Kevin and I were having a chat and I was feeling particularly vulnerable, so I asked him, can I be a real artist if I don't do any personal work? I feel like I've heard so much online about keeping a sketchbook, drawing stuff you like for fun, and drawing every day, and I've been feeling really anxious about only doing my homework for Evolve and not the rest of the stuff because I don't really feel motivated to do it, it doesn't sound fun to me, and I don't have time for it anyway. And he looks at me and says, "You don't have to do any personal work." I don't. I have maybe one painting in the studio that I did for me, and the rest of it is for clients and companies. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it has to be a rule for everyone. The same thing with sketchbooks. I don't keep one, I've never had one. Y'all, this blew my mind. I feel like I've been pretty woke about art. I realized that references are a normal part of art and not cheating, that a style is something that you develop consciously through your choices, not a series of mistakes that you use as a crutch, that there is no glory in being self-taught if you have the opportunity to learn from a good resource, and that tracing is a valid tool for art making. But not doing personal work, not keeping a sketchbook? Now that is truly nuts. And I've been making myself feel bad for not doing it for literally no reason. Then I said, I've always had trouble keeping up with the advice that told me to do that. I would just sit there at my desk with my sketchbook, try to draw something that I liked. It would look bad and I would feel demoralized and then quit art for another couple months. Am I not just soft and lazy for not being able to push through this? I feel like from what I've seen online, this is what every artist has to go through, and I'm just being a wuss for not being able to do it. And Kevin said, no, it's just like putting a lot of time and effort into a part of the painting that shouldn't be your priority. It doesn't make things any better. It doesn't help you learn. If you're drowning, you're not learning. And learning doesn't have to be torture. It makes sense that you were demoralized after just producing bad drawing after bad drawing with no guidance or education, because nobody wants to feel like their time is being wasted. And if you don't feel like you're getting anything out of it, you're not going to want to put any time into it. You know, I might not have believed that in the past, but after going through Evolve for the past year, I'm beginning to understand. Parts of Evolve have been tedious, boring, and even frustrating at times because I didn't have the right trash can, or my AC wasn't working well enough and I was hot and cranky. But I never felt like I was drowning, I never felt like I was being hazed, and I've still improved way more on this course than when I was working harder for more hours and suffering more. So that's it about the paintings in the visit. Now I want to give some shout outs to the people I met while I was there. First of all, Kevin, thank you so much for inviting me and helping me out with my art. I am so looking forward to studying with you for a year. Also, he was kind enough to show me a lot of his portfolio, including some of his early works, commercial illustrations and book covers, and his portraits. I know a lot of people have been asking about what Kevin has worked on before, since none of that is online in any sort of portfolio anywhere. I'll be uploading this as a separate video later for those who are curious. It's literally over 40 minutes long, and the audio isn't great because I don't really know what I'm doing as a videographer, so I will be manually captioning the entire thing to make it accessible to as many people as possible. So please stay tuned for that. Daniel Folta, thank you so much for meeting with me and answering all those questions way back when I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to do the course or not. He's been working hard spreading the Evolve Artist message, and if you see any ads on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram about Evolve Artist, that was Daniel, I think. Also, I got to meet Kevin's daughter, who paints as well. She's not on social media, so out of respect for her privacy, I won't share any more, but it was great meeting you. I'm excited to spend the next year with you as well. I also met someone who watches the channel. This is my first time meeting a viewer in real life, so that was really exciting. Also, thank you, Jade, for taking these 2 hilarious pictures with me and inspiring me to start making TikToks again. I'll leave a link to her Instagram in the description. While she was here visiting, she got some help from Kevin on her cat and cube painting. I just think it's so interesting how similar the online program and the in-studio program are. She was just in town for a day and decided to drop by the studio, and she was able to sit down and immediately get started on doing some painting. Also, I am so sorry that I forgot your name, but I found this student who was painting in the back corner, this painting of Ribbon. And I was like, oh my god, thank you. Somebody in this realism bubble who wants to do more like video game art like I want to do. He said that he would be graduating high school soon and wanted to attend Ringling for video game art. So good luck to you. Last but not least, it was really cool meeting you, Sam, and thank you for chatting with me. She's one of the advanced students who is currently working on a painting of herself cosplaying as Steve from Minecraft with a pickaxe and everything. I love it. And everyone else I saw, hi as well. And thank you to everyone who's been watching me, giving me your advice, and even starting up Evolve Artist as well. So yeah, I signed a lease for an apartment in New Jersey. My last day of work will be on August 20th, and everything seems to be coming together. Well, except for finding a subtenant for the old apartment, which is kind of tragic, but we have an ongoing application right now. I have 2 showings tomorrow, and I'm just fingers crossed that I can find somebody before the end of the month. Also, I feel like I should mention that as I was unpacking my stuff, I found this old notebook from that entrepreneurship class I was talking about. I flipped it open and I landed right onto this page. Chapter 5. The plunge doesn't have to be a plunge at all. Why not plunge? Skip the delayed life plan. Many people do things they don't like in the short term in the hope that one day they'll be able to live their true life plan. There are 2 major flaws with this approach. The first is that nobody is going to sit down and tell you when it's okay to stop doing what you don't want to do. The second is that we have limited time. If you plan to live forever, you can have as many life plans as you want, but given that you only have one life, why not use it to do the things you want to do? Make the impact you want to make and not wait another minute to do it. So basically, this whole situation is just me relearning stuff I already knew again. Oh well, better late than never. Also, I feel inspired to reread that entrepreneurship textbook that we went through in this class. I feel like I'll have a different perspective on it now. After I finish this video, I'll finally be able to let all these New Jersey visit thoughts exit my brain, and I can start grinding on finishing the rest of Block 3 and getting a little bit into Block 4. While I'm in New Jersey, I plan on continuing to make video updates and also streaming as much as I can, maybe every day I'm in the studio, because why not? Thank you so much to everyone who has supported me on Ko-fi so far. If you've enjoyed my videos and want to leave me a tip, help me with equipment upgrades, or buy one of my paintings, I'll leave the link to my Ko-fi page in the description. I've also been posting some TikToks about my studio visit, so if you want a little bit more in-depth info about the exact painting setup at the studio, feel free to check it out below. Thank you so much for watching, and let's keep growing and improving together. Stay safe and healthy out there, and remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work.